It's weird because when you're recruiting a guy like DJ was the number 2 quarterback coming out of high school. He was right behind Bryce Young, and I think those two were the only 2 5-star quarterbacks in that 2020
Correct.
class. So, when you look at the recruiting rankings, I mean, it's hard to get in the mind of a 17 and 18-year-old and see how they're going to develop mentally. You really just base that off of traits and what they showed in high school. So that's why DJ was a 5-star recruit, because you saw him. He was throwing 85 yards as a high school sophomore, basically. It was like absurd what the kid was doing. And he still has that same kind of arm talent. But I think mentally it's just a different game quarterback is than almost any other position in sports, honestly. So that's why I think you see so many guys fail, and why so many guys, because it's more than just having a big arm and an accurate arm. Like, you have to be able to process and do all those things. I think DJ's taking a little bit more time. He is, like I said, he is getting a lot better at it. But that's why I think he's taken more time than a guy like Bryce Young, for example. Bryce Young was maybe not the biggest. Obviously, he's only like about 5'10" or so. Not the strongest arm like DJ has either. But, man, he is one of the best I've seen in college in terms of processing. And that's something I think DJ has kind of struggled with in addition to inaccuracy, in addition to his footwork and stuff like that too. But like I said, it's taken him more time. I'm still expecting a pretty big jump from him this year as he goes to Florida State now. But I think that's why you see so many other quarterbacks take a little bit longer or not even work out at all, is because the mental side of the game is so hard to scout. You really just don't know if a kid's got it mentally until you go out there, honestly.
That's what I've tried to tell people forever, as somebody that focuses on recruiting and go to all these events. We can only show you the physical traits. Mm-hmm. They're running into each other. They're running by each other. But that part right there you mentioned, brother, that's really freaking hard. So
yeah.
Before we get into the other stats and categories broadly, this is something I can't wait for. We're going to do here in about 5 minutes. I want to ask you about offensive line. It's the other spot that I think historically is just a really difficult thing to evaluate. High school to college, transfer, like Florida State has taken a lot of transfers. They got a bunch of 5th-year senior, 6th-year senior kind of guys, but I'm not sold on them. I thought some of their guys would actually move on, or they would take other guys, and they've kind of stuck with it. Because, like I've said this 100 times on this show, people get mad about it, but it's true. They had like 22 yards rushing against Clemson. Now, I know Clemson's got dudes up front, and their linebacker corps last year was utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they got mauled up front. They got mauled. You're not going to ascend to the top of college football and get over the hump if your offensive line can't be at least adequate against top-notch competition. Tell me if you think the following is true or false, and you can go with it however you want. I say that it is best, by and large, and Atkins is a good offensive line coach and all that, to high school, to your school, your red shirt, really slow develop. Longer time going that route is usually, not always, you can always add a player, but it's usually going to be the better path than taking 3 or 4 transfers and putting them together, even if they have experience. What say you?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because, you could develop a guy through high school and in your system, whereas a transfer has to come in and kind of learn a whole new system and what they've been taught. It's easier to teach a child a second language than it is to teach an adult, honestly. So I think that's an interesting point that you bring up. I thought Florida State's offensive line played pretty well last year. I think that Clemson game was an outlier for sure. And I think it is important to remember that Clemson, you mentioned the linebacking core, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Barrett Carter. I mean, they were nasty. And then obviously up front, I mean, you got Tyler Davis, Rukaroro, who are both, going to be probably day 2 picks in the NFL draft this year. They had a true freshman D tackle, Peter Woods, who was probably going to be a first-round pick in 2026. And then their edge defenders were obviously very, very good as well. So I would say that's like, okay, they struggle, but also like most offensive lines struggle against that front seven. If you look at the PFF grades, Florida State, in terms of run blocking, was number, I think, 20 in the country in run blocking. I think they're number 5 in the country in pass blocking. So the other games besides that game, I do agree with you. That Clemson game was kind of not a great look for the Florida State offensive line. Yeah, number 5 in pass blocking and 20 in run blocking. So that's still one of the better old lines in the country, honestly. And they bring back so many of those guys from last year. Obviously, Maurice Smith's coming back, Jeremiah Byers, Darius Washington, Keandre Jones, and obviously TJ Ferguson's probably going to be the starter at left guard, the transfer coming in. But I kind of do like Florida State's offensive line, and I agree with you. The Clemson game was not great, but again, like I said, there's so many offensive lines that did not look good against Clemson that look good against everyone else, basically, because how good that Clemson front seven is. So that's actually, I have a lot of other concerns for this Florida State team going into next year. Offensive line is actually one of the ones I'm not really too worried about right now.